Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, How Our Website's Adapting to Surging Demand. We're just a little bit past the hour. Got some folks that are still joining and logging in, so give another minute or so, and we'll get started shortly. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you again. My name is Derek Yee. I am part of the product marketing team here at Cloudflare. And today I'm joined by Henrik Birgegaard from Queue-it. And today we'll be talking to you guys about how websites are adapting to the surging demand in light of global events, and cover some best practices, tips, and some of the main misconceptions that many users have around sort of web performance and security. Okay, so Henrik, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Great. Awesome. Perfect. So before we get started, just wanted to make sure for everyone on the call today, this webinar will be recorded. There is also a Q&A chat window, so as you have questions throughout the event, please feel free to submit that, and we'll field those questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to go through today. We've got some introductions, so we'll talk about Cloudflare and Queue-it, for those of you that are not familiar with it. And then we'll go through various examples on some of the main misconceptions that we find many of our users have when considering either solution, and some best practice on how to sort of mitigate these issues and challenges within your respective environments. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with how Cloudflare and Queue-it work together and field any questions that you may have. That sound good, Henrik? All right. Okay, so why don't we give you a little bit of introduction here. So Cloudflare, let's move advanced slides here. Okay, so Cloudflare. Basically, Cloudflare, our core mission is around helping build a better internet. We're a global cloud platform with presence in over 200 plus cities around the world. And what we're helping really do is making sure that the internet experience for a lot of our users is a faster, more secure experience. And in today's day and age, with the recent turn of events, we're finding that modern society is relying even more on the internet to stay connected, to remain communicated, and for folks to actually get work done. If you look at sort of where our presence is, so Cloudflare covers over 26 million internet properties around the world. We are a global cloud platform, and because of the sheer scale and the number of domains that we support, we can block almost, in the last, I think, Q4 of 2019, about 50 billion cyber attacks on a daily basis. So basically, because of the sheer scale of what we have a tremendous intelligence that's able to block a lot of the threats that many of our users are seeing to ensure that they have a more secure, protected internet experience. And Henrik, do you want to talk about Queue-it?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be happy to. So I'm from Queue-it, and basically what we have is a virtual waiting room that is being used by a lot of ticketing companies and retailers, recently governments and education industries to handle traffic bottlenecks, typically where you have too many people coming in at the same time and trying to do all kinds of registration or transactions and things like that. And we'll talk more about that as we go a little bit further. But short about Queue-it, we are present in 3 different countries. So it's born and built in Denmark, Copenhagen, but we also have an office in Minneapolis, US, and in Sydney. We have customers all around the globe, and it's really been fast moving in this year because of the COVID-19 virus. And we have more or less, I think it's more or less now anniversary where we are hitting 10 billion people that have been through the Queue system. So similar to Cloudflare, a pretty global presence.
Great. So, as Henrik said, we talked about what's going on with the current pandemic, and dealing with internet surges and traffic is something that we both have a lot of experience with. When you look at the types of sites that Cloudflare supports on its network, here's a good sampling of some recent data points that were taken comparing between January and late March, just about at the cusp of when many of the global lockdowns started taking place. Some of the sites are pretty obvious when you look at, anything to do with kids being stuck at home now, no longer being able to go to school with the closures taking into effect. A lot of entertainment sites, government resource sites really saw, in some cases, up to almost a 250% increase in traffic spike. And this is symptomatic across the board when you look at many of the sites that rely on the internet to really see some tremendous increases in terms of user traffic as a result of the pandemic.
Yep, and I can definitely second that. Speaking from the Queue-it side, from Queue-it, it all started, I think, more or less in Hong Kong, in the Apex region, and it was the surgical masks that was the big thing that everybody needed. I think at one given time we had roughly 1.4 million people in queue in Hong Kong to buy these masks, so pretty high demand. Then we saw the lockdown starting to happen in Europe, and online groceries really picked up. We've been signing on probably close to 10 of the biggest online grocery stores here in Europe, and that then in parallel with that. Pharmacy supplies, hygiene products and things like that has been in very high demand. And then we saw the second wave. And the second wave here is food delivery. People got a little bit tired of whatever they got delivered from the grocery stores. Gardening supplies, home improvement. The weather has been pretty awesome here in Europe recently, so and people are home, so they have plenty of time to do the garden. And very recently, it's actually the government part that has really been picking up with relief programs, subsidies, and things like that. So some really big spikes and change in online behavior as we've seen it. And talking a little bit more about the challenges. So what we've seen quite a lot of is because of this changing behavior, companies that have been pretty solid before started having slowdowns. Some completely crashed and were down for several days, and we're talking very big enterprise companies here. And obviously that is leading to lost revenue, lost orders. But I think more importantly, and the thing that really hurts is, one thing is what you're losing today, but you're losing a loyal customer going forward. So it's a lot of revenue you're losing when you have these kind of situations. And then again, you need to put a lot of effort into kind of, brand repair. What can you do to mitigate, all the social media stuff that is going on now, where people have easy access to complain and so forth. So that's definitely some of the challenges we've seen so far. And I want to talk about one of the misconceptions. So auto scaling take care of traffic peaks. Auto-scaling is great, and I can only recommend using auto-scaling, but it's not the silver bullet. And why is it not the silver bullet? And the reason can be many things, to be honest. But one of the simple things is, you're probably using a lot of third-party plugins and components. You don't have the same auto-scaling available on that. On all bigger enterprise or larger retail organizations, you have a lot of components that are kind of making up the whole engine. And is everything equally auto-scalable? Probably not. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration here. And I'll also just, to be honest, we've seen a fair number of people coming in, talking about Queue-it, and then we went on autoscalers. Everything is great. We think we can manage. A couple of days, they're coming back. And just to take some examples from real life, Amazon, AWS, why were they down on their Prime Day launch in 2018? They, if any, should be able to autoscale. Disney was down when they launched their new streaming facility. We see big retailers like Walmart and so forth being down, pretty much every Black Friday and so forth. So autoscaling is definitely an important component, but it's not the silver bullet. Then maybe just take an example from the online grocery world. So again, here is a couple of things to really be aware of. One is that the whole logic around online grocery is right now changing. First of all, you'll see a lot of new people coming on for the first time. A lot of people coming on for the first time. So much more traffic to the website. You'll see that people don't go to the normal grocery store anymore, so they do all their online grocery shopping online. So probably means bigger order values as well. And many more people are fighting for the delivery slots. So all in all, there's a much more pressure on the system. Inventory. A lot of people are putting the groceries into the basket, and you need to keep the inventory updated. So a lot of stress on this system. So basically, it just means that the dynamics has changed, and if you were not ready for that, and if you didn't have a contingency plan for this, you're in big trouble. And that's honestly what we've seen recently. So why can Queue-it be a good solution towards that? So if we look at this graph, the line in the middle is kind of illustrating your website capacity. That's what you can handle. That's where all systems are comfortable and you're running smoothly. Now, on these big searches, the red part is actually showing all the people that are coming above your capacity. So that is what will bring down the website or slow it down very significantly. So with an online queue, you basically take all the ones that are in the red zone here and you put them into an online queue. And when it becomes their turn, they get redirected to the website and can continue the shopping. So basically what it means is that you can run at your highest selling capacity throughout the whole crisis or whatever you want to call it. So instead of having slowdowns and being down, you have full control of the traffic of the users going into your website. So how does it actually work? So one thing is you get into the situation where you have the overcapacity situation. We do a simple 302 redirect from the customer's website to our website, basically into the online queue. And the online queue can be completely customized to your look and feel. And it's informing all users about how many users are ahead of them and estimated wait time. And when it's their turn, we do a simple 302 redirect, so you get back to the website and can continue the journey. So with the 302 redirect, it's very simple. We don't have access to any customer data or anything like that, and we don't have any heavy payload, so to speak. And that enables us to run very, very large queues to guns. And just a couple of other important things about it, because in most cases, you don't want to put a queue across the whole website. You have Cloudflare, you have the CDN, that is taking care of all the static content. No reason to put people into a queue unless you actually really need to do it. So what you can do is put it where you have your bottleneck. That can be when people are starting to add items into the cart because you need to update the inventory. So there's a lot of database calls. Or in most cases, it's on the checkout when you have all the database calls, when you're connecting with your payment gateway, and all these kind of things. So you can basically implement it where you need to implement it. And you can run it in what we call a safety net mode. Again, you don't want to show a queue if it's not needed. So if a queue is running on safety net mode on the checkout, as an example, it basically means that if number of users coming in is above your capacity, the queue automatically kicks in. And when traffic is back to normal, the queue disappears and nobody will see it. So it just runs in the background at all times. And we see multiple different suppliers doing the same thing out there. So I think that was a very quick overview of one of the misconceptions about auto scaling. Is that enough or not enough, and why do you still need to have contingency plans in place? So
great. Thanks, Henrik. So yeah, so it's like Henrik said, bottlenecks, if you have any large volumes of traffic hitting your site, the virtual waiting room is a great way to be able to help sort of manage that spillover to ensure that your site integrity is still maintained. But what about if the traffic that's hitting your site is not legitimate? So we know more and more the presence of large-scale denial of service attacks where the only intent is to be able to make your services unavailable and to then consequently impact your business. One thing I've heard many, many times, so like anytime we go to conferences, people ask, oh, have you heard of Cloudflare? And it's like, oh, yeah, we signed for Cloudflare way back when. And the reason why we hear again and again is because they were coming under an attack. And the one thing I always hear a lot of people say, why would somebody attack us? They really take it personally, thinking it's like, we're nobody. We're not a big, huge brand that there's a lot of, notoriety about bringing them down. So they always kind of come into this question. It's like, why us? And this is a big misconception. A lot of businesses think yeah, we're not big enough. We're not a Walmart. We're not, so why would anybody attack us? It doesn't matter. And when we think about, here's a survey results from Hiscox Insurance 2019, when they look at, from their cyber readiness attacks, the increases that we're starting to see year over year. Small and medium-sized businesses are significantly beginning to get more and more attacked. And, a large part of this reason is because a lot of these businesses, they honestly don't have the resources to invest heavily in a cybersecurity team. And, nefarious agents are actually taking advantage of that. So when we think about what these could actually cost, that's even further out. When you look at the average cost of an attack is about $369,000. Which is pretty significant. And again, these numbers are continuing to increase. So when a lot of businesses think that nobody's going to attack us, then, there's really you've got to invest in solutions that can help you, be more proactive in being able to guard against threats. Now, what are the types of threats? When we talk about cyber threats, what exactly are we referring to? So here are some common types of threats and attacks that many businesses are going to deal with. So let me see my slides. Okay, so let's go back here. So looking at the types of threats and attacks that many businesses will face, there's phishing attacks, ransomware, credential stuffing, and denial of service attacks. So the first two very prominent, so things like phishing. So you get an email that says, oh, click here to enter your account. We need to verify your password or something. So a lot of us have heard of these. What these emails are doing are actually then targeting malware to your system. And there's a lot of ways you can mitigate that in terms of training employees. There are even solutions you can get specifically that you install on your devices that can help sort of monitor or to protect against that. Ransomware is an extension of that. So you've also heard of stories of ransomware where businesses are now, their data is being held hostage, where you've got to donate, you got to pay so much in Bitcoin to be able to unlock your data. Otherwise, you got to start all over again. So again, another symptom of malware being installed in your devices, and a lot of it is just be aware of suspicious emails or anything being installed on your devices that could potentially compromise it. The last two are on credential stuffing and DDoS. So credential stuffing is a result of cybercriminals being able to use multiple passwords. So they actually purchase, so you've always heard about data breaches, where username and passwords are being stolen from many of the main providers and they're being sold on the dark web. So no one's going to actually sit and try every one of these passwords in every system. Instead, what they're using are automated bots that will target just the widest span of sites with user account logins. And they will literally use bots to constantly bombard your site and try every combination of their username and passwords until they get in. Once they get in, they go ahead and secure purchases, they do whatever. So that's becoming more and more common on the web in terms of how hackers are actually using illegally obtained information to be able to try to do fraud. And then lastly, the denial of service attacks. So again, this is something we talked about in varying stages where bots using botnet armies can also be initiating a time sequence attack that will target your server resources at any given time that will then overwhelm them and then render your site unavailable. So these are some of the main types of threats and attacks that many should be aware of. Now, the advantage of looking at something like Cloudflare, as I mentioned earlier in this webinar, so we're a global cloud network. We're helping build a better internet and providing a suite of services that make your website faster and more secure. So Cloudflare provides a wide array of services, and honestly, a lot of people come to Cloudflare first and foremost because they're coming under attack from like a denial of service attack. The one thing they like about Cloudflare is the fact that it's very easy to onboard and it's easy to begin to mitigate to get them back up online. We have a host of other services that's included in our portfolio that provides protection against bots. We also do DNS filtering that will help prevent, the occurrence of phishing attacks and from malware being injected on your system by being able to monitor where your users are actually connecting to. Now, here's an example I wanted to bring up, and this was, so there's a company called Orderbird that they build sort of point-of-sale solutions or software that many restaurants, cafes actually use in their stores. Orderbird, big in Europe, and they actually came to Cloudflare a few years ago, and one of the things that they were coming under attack in 2016, they were under a denial of service attack. And it's happened probably in the worst time possible, which was right around Christmas time. So you can imagine restaurants aren't able to close out tickets. They can't service their customers. It's a pretty big deal. And it took them almost 48 hours to get back online because, one, they were hosted on-prem. They needed to move stuff to the cloud. They were continuing to be bombarded by an attack. And they onboarded to Cloudflare, and we were then able to help them bring all their services back online, and they have not had an attack since then. So since coming on to Cloudflare, they've been blocking almost like 1,500 attacks or threats per month, and they've had complete uptime in that available time.
Cool.
Okay.
Very nice example. I actually like that, and also how fast it actually is to implement. We can quickly bring our site back online. That's another thing that we actually hear when talking to our customers, and there's definitely some things to consider here. Reality is, and these are kind of industry benchmarks we've taken, but also what we're hearing out there. So in 65% of business cases, it takes more than an hour to get your website back up and running. And in some cases, actually roughly 1/3, it takes more than 3 hours to get back. So what is the cost of that? Being down for 3 hours. Let's just take a very simple example. From a retailer doing around 1,000 orders per minute on one of these very busy days. Let's say £75 per deal for 180 minutes. Then we're actually talking about £13.5 million lost in those 3 hours, and that is just on the initial hit. So a very clear advice from here is, it's not easy to get back up when you're first down. There are so many elements in a modern e-commerce platform that needs to be rebooted and get back up and running. Potentially your cache has been needs to be refreshed and so forth. So this is not trivial, and it's something that is truly hurting businesses. And this was supposed to be, your most successful day, right? Where you were doing most sales, and instead you end up potentially handing over all this sales to a competitor. So definitely don't want to be in those shoes.
Yeah, got that. So I mean, to Henrik's point, a lot of people think, oh, we can just get back up and running, and it's not as simple as it sounds. So you then may ask yourself, well, this all sounds, really complicated. If we talk about going down, how much investment of resources do I need to kind of build out into my infrastructure to be able to ensure that we not only have a well-performing site, but also that we maintain, 100% uptime. So a lot of people have that misconception thinking like, yeah, we're not a big company, so we don't have the resources to invest, just like security, to actually onboard, the staff and expertise to be able to do that. So let's talk about if you talk about performance and reliability for any of your sort of web properties, we always kind of start with the basics to think about what do you do to sort of mitigate that. So performance, we look at basically there's 3 components to solving any problems. There's one on your source hosted server. What are you doing there to improve responsiveness, build redundancy? What about the network path between your servers and the user's browser at the endpoint? And then the type of assets that you're serving. These are all the key areas where you could potentially have an issue or have problems. So how would you go about sort of improving that? Well, here's some basic things. So number one, obviously, if you're building websites, you want to make sure that you're compressing content as much as possible to ensure that the files are smaller as they're being delivered over the network. Things you can do like minifying bloated code, removing any scripts that are sort of blocking render or the perceived load time. Things like using the right image formats. These are all some very simple things that you can do, irrespective of actually having to purchase anything, to make sure that you're delivering sort of the best optimal user experience on the browser. Now, what about network latency? So the path from point A to point B, if there's things that are happening or congestion along the way, this is where things can potentially slow down. If you're dealing globally, this gets even worse because then you're talking about, latency, overseas that could again sort of impact the performance of your assets. Things like deploying a CDN has become pretty commonplace for the most time now. CDNs are basically the way to stack or cache static assets across global points of presence from that provider. Using the latest network modern protocols and to reduce any sort of network latencies you have at your host, because that again is going to impact it on what gets served out to the browser. From a host or server responsiveness side, things like we've talked about so far, protecting your servers from attacks, so things like denial of service attacks, the more measures you can do to protect server integrity, that's going to help. To be able to distribute workloads across the back-end clustered environments. So again, not relying on a single point of failure, have multiple server clusters so that you, one, are able to distribute loads across that to ensure viability of your site. Health monitoring is also going to be helpful in sort of proactively determining when there's a problem, and even things like rate limiting inbound traffic. So again, throttling some of the inbound requests so that again, prevent your backend servers from becoming sort of overwhelmed with the high influx of traffic. So those are just some of the basics when you think about what you can do to address any performance issues. So now Cloudflare, again, where we sit in the networks, Cloudflare as a sort of global cloud platform sits between your hosted origin and your users that are connecting to your sites out on the browser side. What we do is actually combine a number of things in being able to help you optimize content and assets, provide sort of that network optimization going from point A to point B. Really are sort of the key fixtures of where and how we sort of resolve some of those challenges. So if you look at how Cloudflare actually works, we sit, like I said, as a globally distributed network. Things we can do to improve the performance of your sites. We can block threats and denial of service attacks and bots, and we can sit across any sort of environment. So if you're purely hosted in the cloud, if you're on AWS, Azure, GCP, even if you have on-premise infrastructure or any combination thereof, Cloudflare is an easy plugin into any of these environments to help you mitigate those issues. And it's pretty simple. So we talked about easy to set up. I mean, I gave you the example with Orderbird that basically you make a DNS change. So instead of your DNS address pointing directly to your host, have it point to Cloudflare instead. And as part of that network, we then provide the array of services that will compress your content, sit as a proxy, do caching on our global network, and block any significant attacks that will potentially hit you. Instead of, it'll come to our network first, and then we begin to mitigate that. So it's really simple to be able to help onboard these services. And like I said earlier, a lot of businesses think that you just don't have the resources to be able to manage and have a staff that can take care of that for you. With Cloudflare, it truly is almost as a hosted service that helps you offboard some of these expertise.
Cool.
So the next thing too, so going on, a lot of our customers are sort of hosted in the cloud, and we talk about, well, my cloud provider, they provide some default security services, so I don't have to think about it, so I should be fine, right? So again, that's a very common misconception. And to your point, yes, a lot of your providers are providing secure services. In fact, many of them provide sort of basic DOS, denial of service protection. Now, one thing to keep in mind too, and this is when you look at your different hosting providers, remember, Security One is just not their core business. They'll provide some base level protection, just because, that's part of the industry of what they do. But also what's more important is that when you are hosting your site with these providers, you're part of a shared infrastructure. So going back to my earlier story, when I had, customers say, yeah, it's like when we came under an attack, we started seeing like high volumes of traffic coming through and hitting our servers. And what they didn't expect is their hosted provider actually went ahead and shut them down because there was no way for them to be able to mitigate that scale of an attack. And what was happening is because they're on a multi-tenant shared infrastructure, is a lot of their other customers that were hosting sites, even though they weren't being attacked, were starting to see some significant degradation in performance. So to prevent that from affecting other of their customers, they actually took them offline. So those are some pretty significant implications of using some of these services. Now, Cloudflare, we actually partner with many of the large hosting providers like IBM Cloud, Acquia, Rackspace, WP Engine. They're all using Cloudflare as their secure service backend, and they're OEM in some respects, but they are key critical partners for us. So if you're using any of these services, chances are you're already using Cloudflare to help you sort of protect some of your domains using our secure services. So now, why Cloudflare? Our service is number one. So like I mentioned, a couple of things. It's very easy to onboard, very simple for folks to be able to integrate really advanced services, just simple plug and play. Our global network is able to amass the intelligence that we're getting from all of the domains that we protect. So when we see threats affecting even smaller businesses or larger accounts, we're able to sort of consolidate that information and to use that in sort of improving our threat protection mechanisms. And then lastly, we've talked a lot about how Cloudflare can improve the resilience and performance of your sites and security. We're doing this all from one sort of integrated kernel across every site that we protect over the world. So that way that, like I said, you don't see any sort of performance hit because you're adding additional security and vice versa. So it truly is sort of an integrated platform.
Perfect. Thanks, Derek. That is super interesting, and I can also talk to the integrated part because Queue-it online virtual waiting room is actually also integrating very seamlessly with Cloudflare, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. So one other thing this COVID-19, it's a temporary thing. It's going to blow over, and things will be back to normal. Hopefully it will, and hopefully it will be soon. But I think that's a very big question mark, unfortunately, as it is right now. And reality again is, if you go back to what I mentioned before, 41% of online grocery shoppers in US actually shop online on the grocery shop for the first time. So if their first experience is a site that is down or very slow responding, they are moving on to the next site, and that's where they will do their online grocery shopping going forward. So the first impression matter, and it's so important if you want to have long and continuously loyal customers. A stat here: 79% of visitors who face poor website performance, they simply won't return and buy, and again, lost business to your competitor. So have these contingency plans in place, and prepare for the future. COVID-19 is just an example. We see a lot of cases where online retailers are getting into the news media for some reasons, get a lot of attention. Again, it brings in a lot of traffic to the website, takes it down. Social media influencers suddenly talking about some of your products. Obviously, fantastic, it's great, but not when it takes down your site. So again, prepare for these things that can and will happen as it will. So just to look at some actionable takeaways, and Derek, feel free to step in here. But autoscalers, definitely autoscale. Make sure that you are really monitoring whatever you can monitor on your platform. We see a lot of load testing happening. That's great, but load testing is only load testing what you're asking it to load test. Go back to the online grocery example. The behavior is changing, so dynamics is now different parts of the funnel. We see examples from Black Friday where you do the load testing, everything looks good. We can do whatever we did last year and more. Reality is though that marketing came up with some great campaign this year, some great product that none of our competitors had and could match. So again, changing the dynamics of your funnel. Derek, you've been speaking a lot to the security and defense and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, active monitoring, ensuring that you have the right defenses in place, and don't take for granted that you're not going to be attacked, because of that again could be a potential area that's going to make your site unavailable. And likewise, when it comes to performance and reliability, the same thing. So if you're using a provider, you want to be able to easily onboard those services to sort of minimize the impact of you having to implement them. Yep.
And then also really make sure that you have some clear communication plans within the company. It's not uncommon that we hear that IT was suddenly surprised by marketing doing a big email outburst, or launching a new big campaign, and they didn't really inform IT in due time, and by that putting a lot of stress to the system. So have a very clear strategy around that as well. And also when you get into these difficult times where behavior again changes, who's going to do what and when, and what are we going to do? So maybe the last piece here, why Cloudflare and Queue-it is a great combination. So one thing is obviously Cloudflare with the whole security package, with the CDN that will handle all the cache. Then combine it with Queue-it, where we can actually integrate the virtual queue system directly on Cloudflare, so on the edge point, meaning that none of the traffic, if queued, will ever hit your website. It will be queued on the edge point. And Cloudflare has these great new Cloudflare workers that we see a lot of our customers take on. It's very easy to implement on. It's extremely powerful, non-bypassable when you do it on the workers, and can be done in a matter of an hour or two. So the combination here is really strong. I don't know if you want to add a few words to it, Derek.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Henrik, that one thing to keep in mind. So a lot of people come to Cloudflare for the sheer scale. In other words, nobody's gonna go build out a data center infrastructure to support their applications in as many cities as we have covered today. So likewise, if you have websites that you're serving to traffic in various regions around the world, and let's say if you're going to be implementing Queue-it's virtual waiting room, because when they sort of reroute requests is their sort of holding pattern, again, Queue-it's not going to go build out the sheer scale of number of centers that we have around the world, so they can certainly leverage, the various points of presence that we have. So again, you're going to see an uptick in performance. So a lot of customers come to us just to be able to capitalize on that sheer presence and scale. So it's only upside as a result.
Yeah. I think that was it. So maybe we should see if anybody has any questions.
All right. Why don't we look through the questions? I don't know, you want to tackle the first question, Henrik? Well, I'm going to go read through some of the others here while you do that.
So let's have a look. So you mentioned the virtual waiting room can be placed in front of the whole website, the add to cart function, and the payment gateway. Where do most retailers implement their virtual waiting room? Again, this is back to really understanding your funnel. You don't want to end up queuing people in a place where you don't need to. If possible, people should be able to browse around your website, look at all the great offerings, add things to the basket if they can. And then in what we actually see from Queue-it side is where the virtual waiting room is needed the most is on the checkout, because that's where you have a lot of database calls, a lot of functionality going into it that cannot be cached. So the quick answer to that is you need to understand your funnel and put the queue where you actually need it. But in most cases, it's on the checkout. Good. I think that should answer it. Do you want to take the next one?
Let's see. There's one here that says, hi, how to cache HTML content on a Cloudflare Pro plan. So the one, Cloudflare does not cache HTML by default. However, you can actually set up certain rules. There is Cloudflare page rules that allows you to determine like what to cache or what not to cache and purge, etc. There is documentation, and I can send that to you afterwards. So you can implement sort of like a cache everything rule and then make exceptions by that. So that does allow you to have some flexibility and more control over Cloudflare's caching behavior.
Perfect. Then I will take the next one. So what have consumers' reactions been to being put in an online queue? And I think there's many reactions to that. Obviously, some don't necessarily like it, but they also understand, and I think that's the key thing here. People understand that the alternative is that your website is down and you cannot shop there at all, or it's really, really slow. So in that hindsight, people don't mind being put into a queue. And we actually see on social media that when a queue has been put into a website where they had previous issues, people are like, why did you do this a long time ago? Because it simply just smoothing out the whole user journey. And there's a lot of dynamics to this. Another thing that we actually see is if you inform users, so users know how many are ahead of them and how long I actually have to wait, then they don't mind waiting. It's that important element of being informed that is the key thing. Without that, people will leave, I guarantee you. One other, and that's quite interesting, thing that we've seen when there's an online queue in place is that we actually see the average deal size, the order size going up. And it's somewhat with the psychology, there's a queue, there's a lot of people that want to buy here, I must be in the right place, in combination with, let me get everything I need now, so I can get through the queue and do my purchase. So I think that kind of sums that part up. What else do we have?
How about, let's see, what are best practices you recommend for including in a communication plan?
Yeah, from Queue-it, it is really making sure that everybody in the organization knows what's going on, that everybody is prepared for all the bigger campaigns that is going on, or simply also if we see something picking up in the social media, in the news, that marketing is very fast alerting, IT, e-commerce, everybody that is involved in this setup. You cannot communicate too much in this case. We primarily see a lot of under-communication. So make sure that there are some very clear channels in the organization who to alert about what and when.
Yeah, I'd probably add a few things to that. I mean, in terms of best practices in our side that we've seen for communication, full transparency always seems to be a good rule of thumb, and to have some sort of regular cadence in place as far as sort of expected channels, so that people know where and when to find information when changes are being made is also very helpful.
Perfect.
I think there's just one more. What is generally the biggest bottleneck for online retailers? I don't think we covered that one yet, right? Have we? I think you might even be able to answer some of these.
Yeah, I think we already answered that one. From the Queue side, definitely whenever you have all the database calls, whenever you have all the third-party connections going into play. In some areas, you actually have a very fine-tuned machine. Everything is working great, but your payment gateway cannot cope with the traffic. So at that case, it's all the way back to just before doing the actual transaction. So that's where we see the typical bottlenecks.
Yeah, and then from Cloudflare side, so since a lot of our customers actually utilize Cloudflare as a CDN for static assets, they oftentimes say, our website performance is great, but the challenge we then have is for logged in users. So once someone logs in, so this is obviously like a loyal customer that has an account, it's not about just static assets anymore. So there's a lot of dynamic components at play. dynamic components come into play, it then means there's going to be separate database calls, so having to pull assets back to an origin, then they start seeing a marked drop-off in terms of performance. And that's usually a problem for them because as they have loyal customers, they want them to log in, they want them to provide sort of a personalized, branded experience that actually starts to impact their perceived load time. So that's another area we see when forcing dynamic calls creates sort of performance lag in terms of bottlenecks.
Yep. And I think that probably answers it. So I think that's actually it. Unless you have anything more to add. Otherwise, it's been a true pleasure. And I hope this has been useful and some good takeaways. And we'll be more than happy to answer further questions. Always feel free to reach out to either me or Derek.
Excellent. Yeah, so thanks again, Heinrich, for your time today. You guys are a valued partner of ours, and we look forward to working with you guys more in the future.
Likewise. It's a true pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, great. Everyone, thank you very much for your time today. And like I said, this webinar recording will be made available. If you care to share it with your colleagues, it will be available on demand. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Queue-it team. They'll be happy to address any questions you have about their virtual waiting rooms, and they can even support you on any sort of Cloudflare deployments that you need at this time as well. All right, thanks everyone. We're signing off.
Thank you.